Conditions May Apply by CinnamonPinecones. Read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 61. Reckless Idiot Night. Hawks, no. What do you mean? Ivy demanded, scrambling up from their sprawled out position on the roof, watching DJ hunt for rats in the alley below. There's a meeting of some kind. There's tons of people and they're wrapping it up. This is dumb luck. We're not going to get a chance like this again, and I've already got the place surrounded, he explained. Hawks, do not go in. We're both en route. I'll be there in under 6 minutes. Ivy, Eraser piped up over the comms. 5 minutes, they responded as their feet pounded across the concrete. I'm not leaving my post. They're going to notice when their buddies walk out and start getting snatched up by feathers. Hawks warned. Hawks, you have no idea what kind of gear they could have in there. We both know one flamethrower and your DOA. It's not worth it. We found their base. If a few people get away, it won't be the end of the world, Ivy asserted, their breaths coming up short already from how fast they were booking it. Damn, you know it's bad when Ivy's telling you not to be reckless, they heard Eraser mumble under his breath. I heard that, jackass. You were meant to. He deadpanned. Piss off. When we get there, Eraser and I will focus on infiltration, and Hawks, I need you to keep your post, catch any runaways, and maintain the perimeter. Do not leave your post unless we need backup, and do not engage directly. We need you as backup. No one else can get here in time, so if you go down and we need someone, we're crap out of luck. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. Focus on getting here, not yapping, Hawks complained. Eraser, alert Suka if you haven't already, and Hawks, I got a big ask for you, they said, ignoring his jab entirely. What? If I'm not gone when the cops get there, I'm gonna need a ride, they explained with a cringe. I didn't hear you say that, and I'm not saying yes, he responded curtly with a subtle knowing edge to his tone. Brilliant. I've got eyes on the building coming in from the south. These stupid idiot kids were going to be the death of him. They shouldn't give hero license out so young. Granted, that was hypocritical because he was a licensed reckless 19-year-old once too, but that just meant that he had the first-hand experience to know what a bad idea that was. And the longer he taught, the more that idea cemented itself. He wondered if Ivy started younger than he did. And why the hell the probably youngest of them all was the voice of reason that Hawks listened to. Those two got along like a house on fire after Ivy got over their initial violent disdain for him. They went from mortal enemies to thick as thieves in under 24 hours, and Shota just decided not to question it. I'm primed to enter from a window on the south-facing wall. Building is almost completely open floor inside. Eraser, report to the mirrored window on the north side. I've got eyes on at least 18 people in the main room, though more may be in a storeroom where I assume most gear is being held in the northwest corner of the building. Hawks, once Eraser is in position, send in some feathers as a distraction while we take down as many as we can. I will focus on the main room. Eraser, you stand guard and take down people by the storeroom to make sure no one can arm themselves any more than they already are, Ivy instructed. Got it. Roger. Hawks and him replied in unison. Well, as young as they may or may not be, they knew how to lead and strategize. Their plan was as sound as it could be given the circumstances, and their command left no room for argument. They really needed to get a license. That kid could go far in underground heroics at the very least. Tsukashi's ETA is 13 minutes. His backup will be less than a minute behind. I see the building. I'll notify when I'm in position, Shota subtly warned. Understood, Ivy called back. Kami, this was a bad idea. A lot can happen in 13 minutes, but he could already see people leaving the building with red feathers following them from above. He needed to get to his post now. Swinging up into place, he surveyed the interior in a split second and looked across over to Ivy. The window was already cracked. It wouldn't be hard to get through. Flashing a signal that he was ready to Ivy, they started a countdown. 3, 2, 1. Ivy dropped down from their already broken window and separated the remaining occupants from the main exit as Shota broke through this thin pane of glass and dropped down as close to the storeroom as he could. There was a split second of stillness before chaos broke out. Several people lunged toward him at once, and feathers started flying every which way, scooping up people left and right, leaving them suspended in the air high enough off the ground that they would hesitate to try to struggle free. Good heavens, that kid's quirk was helpful. Shota was less and less surprised by how highly he ranked every time he saw him work. He had at least 5 people out of the fight, and he didn't even have eyes on them. He wasn't even in the building. That level of control and talent with such a complex quirk was something he had never seen in someone so young. Shota was honestly impressed, even if he was as much of a little shit as Ivy. Maybe being obnoxious was a prerequisite for prodigies. Now was not the time to be pondering that thought, though, because he currently had about 6 people going for his throat, and one of the guys Hawks was holding up was shooting electricity out of his fingers. Hawks, you need to take down the guy you've got nearest to Ivy. He's shooting out sparks. It's a quirk, but I can't keep eyes on him, he barked over the comm. Got it, Hawks confirmed, and he saw the man start to drift, kicking and screaming toward the window Ivy had come through. He'd taken down 2 of his 6 assailants, but he just heard the door open behind him. Being cornered was one thing, but being surrounded was another. Crap. Whipping around, he saw the man with the heat vision quirk and the freeze ray they had encountered a couple of weeks ago. And dang it, he still had the freeze ray. Wait, no, this could work. He had the thing pointed straight at him, so he slung his scarf up and over the rafters and pulled with all his strength. And sure enough, ice erupted forth, trapping the last 4 people after him, but also, unfortunately, both his legs from the mid-thigh down. That was much preferred to the poor schmucks that had been lying on the ground where he had knocked them out. They were completely encased. If someone didn't break them out soon, they were liable to asphyxiate, but that was a problem for when he wasn't half immobilized and getting aimed at again. Swinging the now very considerable heft of his legs, he took a leap of faith. Hopefully the ice would break on impact and not break him as well. He missed getting his hand frozen to his capture scarf by centimeters, and thank Kami, the ice on his legs shattered off as he touched down on the ragged concrete floor. He was now down a capture scarf and still had bits of ice clinging to him, but he could move, so he charged forward at the man already fumbling to aim and fire at him for a 3rd time. But Shota was too close and too fast, and the gun went clattering to the floor as the man let out an awful scream when Eraser's foot connected with his hand hard. His pained groans were cut off after a swift blow to the back of the head. Turning back to the rest of the room, he was relieved to see Ivy still standing. If his quick math was correct, Ivy had similarly been up against 7 people, but only 3 were still in the fight. They looked to be doing well, but they had their knife out. They only ever brought that out as a last resort, so Shota joined the fray as quickly as he could. Not realizing that their second assailant was freed from his own fight, the first guy went down easy. No one saw him coming. Hawks was dealing with at least 10 people outside. He could hear them screaming, but he didn't hear fighting, so he assumed Hawks had them under control. The man with some sort of mirage-based quirk was no match for Ivy, and the other woman's water-based quirk wasn't doing her much good on dry land. But once he activated his quirk on her, the conglomeration of whatever beverages had been in the room dropped to the floor, and her split second of shock was more than enough time for him to take her down. Just in time for him to hear sirens approaching from the south. Ivy. Injuries. Minimal. Actually minimal, or your definition of minimal? Actually minimal. Hawks, get me out of here. I don't know what you're talking about. Who even said that? Hawks replied over the comms. At the same time, a large feather came through the south window, scooped Ivy up with an undignified yelp, and dragged him out the north window, but not without hitting their shoulder on the side. Ow, you dickhead, there's broken glass there, they grumbled. Sorry, that was actually an accident, Hawks replied, sounding genuinely remorseful. Are you okay? Yeah, I'll live. Now put me down. This is far enough. Shota ignored their bickering and ran back over to the two people cemented to the ground and covered in ice. Thankfully, one of them had their back to the blast, and their airways were left unobstructed, but the other guy's face was covered in a substantially thick layer of ice. Kami, this was gonna hurt, but it was better than dying. Probably. He brought his boot down hard on the side of their face, and the ice shattered. Their face was bloody, but that was a good sign. It meant that their heart was still beating enough to push blood to the surface. Their nose was probably broken, but their mouth was unblocked, and they were blinking around in a daze as they pulled air into their lungs. That was too close for comfort. Officers and paramedics started flooding into the warehouse, and Shota directed them to the back room and the most injured people, respectively. Anyone still conscious was screaming profanities, but he ignored them and went to debrief the detective. He was about to leave when he heard one of them shout him out by name. Eraser, you piece of crap! You and that rat are gonna pay for this! You're a dead man, you hear me? You're freaking dead! He screamed violently, enough for spittle to fling out of his mouth as an officer dragged him away. Outwardly, Shota gave no reaction. He just watched as he was stuffed into the back of a cruiser, but he recognized that guy as the other buyer who got away. He was the one Ivy said was a local, affiliated with the gang. That wasn't an empty threat. Kami, if they didn't have a target on their backs before, they certainly did now. He needed to warn Ivy. This was a massive bust, and time would tell how much money they had just cost the gang. They weren't going to be happy, and they knew exactly who to blame. Hawks had no reason to ever come back to this side of town. Shota went home at the end of the night, but Ivy lived here. They were really going to have to watch their back. It was a solid half hour before all the perps were cleared out. It turned out that Hawks was juggling 13 people outside. Eraser took down 9 if you count the 4 that got caught in friendly fire, and Ivy got 5. 27 people meant a lot of cruisers and a lot of cops. The place was crawling with them, and Eraser hoped that Ivy really had gotten far enough away, but he was too busy with all the chaos to check in, and Hawks was similarly tied up. Kami, he really hoped they meant minimal when they said minimal. It was a full hour after Ivy had left before he could check in with them. Ivy, report back. What's your current location? About halfway home. You guys were taking forever. Do these things have trackers in them? Yes, Ivy. Yes, they do. Well, good thing I was joking. I'm on the roof of the warehouse 2 blocks south of you. If you're still at the scene, that is. All right, I'm on my way. Want a ride? Hawks asked as he walked up behind him. Absolutely not. He shot back with a grimace. Suit yourself, he said with a sneer before taking off in the direction Ivy pointed them. Shota caught up with them a little over a minute later because he did not have the energy to be in a rush, but the conversation he dropped into made him regret that decision. Well, that's a lot of blood for something that's completely fine and taken care of, he heard Hawks argue. What the hell happened? He asked, exasperated, as he walked over to them. The sleeve of Ivy's left arm had a cut in it, and it looked to be darkened with blood all the way down to the elbow, but the hole through the sleeve showed a sterile white. Nothing. It's fine. I'm fine, they insisted. Knowing them, it was not fine. Sure, it may be taken care of now, but he doubted it was fine given the amount of blood still on their sleeve. Did it need stitches? He asked. Their lack of response was telling. How the hell did you get stitches already? Did you do it yourself? Hawks screeched incredulously. Ignoring him entirely, Shota continued, How many? Like 4 or 5. It's fine. It's my left arm anyways. It's fine. How the hell do you consider that minimal damage? He asked with a heavy sigh. Well, it was minimal when you asked me. This idiot is the one that ran me into broken glass, they shot back. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Hawks apologized for probably the 1,000th time if Ivy's reaction was anything to go by. Are you uninjured, Hawks? Yes, I'm fine, he said, looking awfully guilty. All right, kid, what else you got? What do you actually consider minimal? Shota asked, turning his attention back to Ivy. Probably a lot of bruises and some minor cuts. I'm fine, like, actually fine. Stop worrying, they spat. You don't make that easy, he shot back. Whatever. Here's your calm. I'm going home. I'll see you Monday, and I'm not budging on that no matter how much you bitch at me, Eraser. They got to their feet and headed toward the ledge of the roof. You're not jumping off the side of the roof with stitches in your arm, Hawks shouted after them. Weird that I seem to be doing that anyway, then, they quipped as they continued on their way. He watched them as their bickering faded out of earshot, and Hawks scooped Ivy up, flying them to street level while Ivy tried to struggle out of his grip. It was bittersweet to watch him go, because on the one hand, he was a good kid and a good hero. Shota had no doubt that Hawks was going to go far in his career, but on the other hand, those two together were completely insufferable. Come on, Ivy, let me take you home. I won't tell anyone where you live. I just want to make sure you're safe. Those guys were yelling about how they're going to kill you and you're already injured. Hawks complained as he finally set them back down on solid ground. They've been yelling about how they're going to kill me for years, Hawks. This isn't anything new. But sure, walk me home. Do you want my legal name and social security number while we're at it? They shot back. Ivy, he whined as obnoxiously as possible. You two were just nagging me for being too reckless. Come on. Exactly. That's my job. I have a reputation to maintain around here. Now get lost. I want to go home. They jabbed while steadfastly remaining in place. Fine. I'll leave if you take this, he said, handing them a small feather. Break it if you ever get in trouble, and I'll come back. How is that any different than just leading you to my house? It's just a glorified tracker. Yeah, fine. Just take my number and call me if you need anything. Then he tried to insist. Hawks, no, having ties to known criminals isn't a good look. I wasn't here tonight. You've never met me, and you've never even heard of me. Okay? Now beat it. I've lived here 4 years. I can handle myself. Hawks looked very sad for a split second. A bone-deep, worn-out kind of sad. A kind of sad that Izuku was achingly familiar with. Short of killing him myself, I don't think I'm getting rid of Eraser anytime soon. He's got my back, and if you ever need me, just ask him. All right? They tried to assuage. Goodbye, Hawks. They offered out a hand for him to shake, but he pulled them into a hug, being careful not to jostle the left shoulder in the process. It was quick, kind of awkward, but they returned the gesture anyway. His feathers were soft and tickly, and it felt nice to know that he cared. Thanks, Ivy, he said after he let go, the flash of sadness returning to his eyes for another split second. He hesitated for a moment before saying goodbye and flying off. They waited a while, watching him fade into the distance before they checked themselves for feathers. They were surprised to find none. They were sure the hug was a ploy to plant one, but no, he just wanted a hug. That fact sent a pang of that same weary sadness through their heart. They had no clue what Hawks's background was. They had no clue why he was so scared and sad underneath his facade, but they knew that feeling. Kami, did they know that feeling? They took their time wandering around aimlessly to make sure no one and nothing was tailing them before they finally ambled back to their warehouse. DJ saw them coming and decided to call it an early night as well, following him down into the stairwell. He took the time to actually remove the eyeshadow he'd been wearing for far too long now and changed into proper PJs that weren't covered in blood before curling up in his nest with DJ and drifting off to sleep. End of chapter.